This week, Vancouver launched and unveiled the long-anticipated bike sharing program. Despite being in the works for over 7 years, the radical pro-cycling agenda of the mayor and Vision Vancouver was not going to be deterred. But upon my investigation into the successes, or should I say failures, of bike share programs in other cities, people in Vancouver may be stuck with a bill rather than a bike. Despite hiring a third-party private business named Mobi to implement and run the bike share program, the city will still be funding it to the tune of $5 million taxpayer dollars for the first 5 years. Beginning this week, 250 of the Mobi bikes are available throughout the city at 23 stations. This will expand to 1,500 bikes and 150 docks across the city proper. I mentioned earlier this had been in the works at the city for over 7 years. The much maligned project hit a major roadblock in 2012 when the first company they selected, named Bixi, and their contracted supplier named Alta ran into problems. Bixi, the company who provided Montreal with their bike sharing program, hit financial problems. And in 2014, the Bixi program lost $1.5 million in Montreal, and the city would eventually have to take over the program, costing taxpayers even more. But Montreal isn't the only example of a failed bike sharing program in a major city. Take just down the road in Seattle, where their bike sharing program failed so spectacularly in its first year, they fell short on the number of rides they were projecting and the number of members. And in fact, in March this year, the city spent $1.4 million to rescue the failing program. What's even more fascinating is that there's new research showing that Seattle and some other cities' bike sharing programs are actually being used by mainly wealthy people and failing to reach the working poor and those in need of affordable transportation, something that has long been an argument in favor of such bike sharing programs. I got a chance to go out on the street a couple days this week and ask some people what they thought of the new program. Now, most people were optimistic and thought it was a great idea, and most people didn't really share my concerns. But I did notice that some people were a little bit concerned about the sanitation issue around the helmets, because we have to have them, they're mandatory in BC, and so they have to be attached to the bikes. And some people actually didn't like the fact that the city was putting money into it.
I'm just hoping that they're not going to be clinging on to tax dollars and to city funds in the long run, because obviously we don't want additional expenses when people can get around using their own bikes or walking, for example.
It would be a concern if I owned a bike rental shop. It might go down. I think that, if you're going to cruise around the seawall, you're probably going to go rent a bike from one of the bike rental shops. If you're going to cruise around downtown and you just want to go point to point, then you're probably going to grab one of these.
Downtown Vancouver is ripe with many bike rental stores already. Many of these private businesses could stand to lose some business if this bike share program really takes off. So I called some of them up, and what they told me is they were indeed concerned. The owner of Cycle City Tours and Bike Rentals told me that one of his concerns is that the bikes from the bike share program may get all used up by tourists who find them easier to access, therefore leaving people who actually live in the city without access to the bikes. Another owner, Simon Coots of Simon's Bike Shop, was a little more skeptical, saying, quote, "I honestly think the city doesn't know what it's got itself into, because the bikes over time will be lost, stolen, or vandalized to the point where the program won't be even viable. In 1 year's time, 3/4 of those bikes won't even be around." I know Vancouver is different, and we have a lot more people living in our downtown core than, say, a Seattle. But if there is any consistent evidence out there about bike sharing programs, it's that they end up costing the taxpayer far, far more than we were ever promised. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.